I just listened to every album by the band Black Widow, and here are my thoughts. So I'm really excited to talk about this one because going through Black Widow is the reason that I decided to go through these classic rock bands in the first place. Several months ago, I decided I wanted to go through a little doom metal phase because I didn't know that much about doom metal. I found that I liked the rock side of it more, which was often called either stoner rock, doom rock, or occult rock. And I tried to find something within the occult rock name that I might be able to like. So when you Google the genre occult rock, a Wikipedia page comes up, and that Wikipedia page says, oh, occult rock was founded by bands such as Coven and Black Widow. So I had never heard of Black Widow before, so I checked them out, and I was so blown away by them that I got into a whole classic rock phase, and I decided to just go through every other classic rock band. So Black Widow is a doom rock band that released their first album under a different name. This name was Pesky G or Pesky G. I don't know the pronunciation, but it's Pesky, P-E-S-K-Y, and then G-E-E, and then exclamation point. The album they released is called exclamation mark. They released this album in 1969, and it is primarily a jazz rock cover album. So, a lot of other rock bands were more blues inspired at this time. They were going in a little bit jazzier direction. This album is interesting enough to listen to just for a little piece of music history. They cover some very recognizable songs like Season of the Witch, Take Another Piece of My Heart. I think they cover Born to Be Wild on this album as well. The real magic happens when they change their name to Black Widow and they release their first album, Sacrifice, in 1970. And just like Coven's first album that I had spoken of 2 videos before, this album is like blatantly satanic in its themes, blatantly celebrating Satanism. For them, I think they had just done it as a theatrical approach, much like say Alice Cooper did, or someone like Ghost does now. They had one semi-hit from this album, and it was called Come to the Sabbath. It still, they still didn't make it big, and it's not like this album, topped the charts or anything. But this song was covered by several bands later on. Propagandhi was one that I know of off the top of my head. But really, this album is chock full of amazing songs. It's one of the best albums I've ever heard. It's one of the best classic rock albums I've ever heard. Like, holy hell, from front to back, this album is just 10 out of 10. So I can't recommend that enough. Right after this, I suspect that Black Widow had to conform to the same standards that Coven did after the Charles Manson murders were, made headline news. And record companies were less willing to publish satanic material, so Black Widow releases a self-titled album, and they go in a little bit more of a palatable psychedelic rock direction here. A couple parts I thought it sounded a little like space psychedelic rock, and this one here is a solid album with several great songs. One that comes off the top of my head is like When My Mind Was Young. That was such an earworm for me. I could not get it out of my head. The final song, Legend of Creation, I remember really liking that one as well. I love Pomeranians, but 5 Pomeranians might be too many. After releasing this second album, their following 2 albums go into a little bit less of a spacey theme and a little bit more into like a medieval rock theme. And these albums are just titled 3 and 4, so easy enough to remember. The third album, just called 3, opens with an 11-minute segmented epic called The Battle, which was a really good song. It closes with a song called Old Man, and this was my favorite song by the band outside of their first album, Sacrifice. Their fourth album took a little bit more time for me to warm up to. I didn't love it when I first heard it. It's a little bit of an interesting situation. So they had replaced their vocalist for this album, so it's a new vocalist. They recorded it in 1972, 73, but they didn't release it until a couple decades later when they had let a record company just pick it up, press it, and release it. And this fourth album is a lot more understated in its value and its genius. It's a much calmer album. To me, it's kind of like if their previous album, which was very medieval rock themed, had a baby with something like Peter, Paul, and Mary. After a few listens, I did grow to love this album as much as I loved the previous two. So the second, third, and fourth album ended up all being of a very similar quality to me. Very, very enjoyable, very listenable, and this fourth album had several songs that I really liked in it and just got endlessly stuck in my head. They release almost nothing in the decades that follow. In 1999, they released something called Return to the Sabbath. This is not new material. This is instead demos of their album Sacrifice. So if you find this album on, like, say, a streaming service, you're getting kind of a rough copy of the real thing. Be sure to look for the real album, which is 1970's Sacrifice. They reunite for one final album in 2011. This album is called Sleeping with Demons. Overall, I didn't just love this album because it didn't have the sound or the soul or the feeling that I loved from their earlier work. To me, this sounded a little bit more like Alice Cooper, like they were almost satirizing their own themes and their own message. The lead single, Hail Satan, was really just reworking the melody of their hit song, Come to the Sabbath, and they tried to get extra attention on it by getting former Black Sabbath vocalist Tony Martin to sing a verse onto it, but it was still so much less poetic and so much more in your face, which wasn't really in line with their previous work for the most part. If there's one song on this final album that really spoke to me, it was the ballad Into the Light. But that's it. That wraps up what I think about this band. As for album rankings, again, easy one. Sacrifice is their best. 2, 3, and 4 are all of similar great quality, and then their final album, Sleeping with Demons, was the worst to me. Thank you for watching, and here are my favorite songs.
My dreams mean nothing